Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. Of course, I am Dave Smith. I'm solo for this episode. Haven't done a solo episode in quite a while, but I wanted to come and talk to you guys a little bit more about my thoughts of all the craziness that's been going on around the country since our last episode a couple days ago. The violence, the protests, the looting, and all types of horrific assaults have continued all throughout the country. And I know we talked about this a bit on the last episode, but I just wanted to talk more about why I am so against all of this stuff and why I think it's horrible. And I think every libertarian particularly should be against it. And I'm pretty disappointed in a lot of people in the liberty movement. There's been a lot of libertarians who the only thing that they're willing to condemn is the police, it seems like. And I've even gotten some heat from people who say that I'm switching my narrative too much and not condemning the police, which I got to say, of all the things to be criticized for in my career, I never thought I would be criticized for being too soft on the police. And I honestly think, for people who are familiar with me and have been following my work for the last years, it's a pretty ridiculous criticism to launch at me. I do want to say there are some libertarians who have been great, and they're the ones who you would assume would be great. Tom Woods has been phenomenal on this. Eric July has been incredible on this issue. And I know Eric just did Tom Woods' podcast. I haven't had a chance to listen to that yet, but I am excited to. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a good one and worth all you guys checking out, with much like all the Tom Woods podcasts. Anyway, so there's been just horrific images that have been coming out for days now. It's been continuing. You know, on the last episode I talked about the old woman being beaten with a 2x4 by four thugs in front of her old elderly husband, who's also being beaten up for, you know, defending their store while people were trying to vandalize it and probably destroy it, burn it down if they had their way. I've been getting, you know, it's really something. Some of the Twitter arguments I've been getting into. Go follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at Comic Dave Smith. I've been having some fun with that site for the last few days. I heard one person actually was arguing with me. I just imagine where your mindset has to be for this. But he said, he goes, well, that old woman called those guys the N-word, which, first of all, I don't know how he claims to know this. There was no video in the camera, so I don't know who's word, but you're going off the word of the thugs who beat up an old woman. But of course, besides that, it's like, I didn't realize she called them a name. Oh, well, in that case, I mean, yeah, beat an old woman with a 2x4, right? Is this where we are? Libertarians? Is that how you feel? Is that okay? Anyway, there's been a lot of other just really, horrific videos. A lot of assaults. People have died. People have been shot. People are in critical condition. Tons of property destruction. Just unbelievable amounts. And it gets to a point where I think it's kind of reasonable to start asking how much this country can take. This country's been through a lot in the last 3 months. A complete suspension of our Bill of Rights, a crackdown on civil liberties, unlike anything in my lifetime, certainly, probably unlike anything in our history on this type of scale. And tens of millions of people have been put out of work. Millions of businesses have been closed. People have been sick. I don't know if we know the exact number of COVID deaths. I know there's some problems in how they calculate them, and there's probably some problems in how they don't calculate them. The ones that people who have died who they don't have numbers on, but it's probably going to be, over 100,000 when this is all said and done. And on top of all of that, to now have these mobs of people destroying cities across the country, it's not just the economic toll on the country; it's the soul of the country. How much more of this can we handle without really breaking? And I'm sure there might be some people out there who are like, well, we hate the system so much that we want to see it break, but I'm not sure that's wise. I am not sure that's wise. There's a lot of things about this system that I am not a fan of, but I don't know that I would want to throw out all of the things that I do like about society just to hope that that solves the problems in it. I don't know. I think maybe in America we've gotten too comfortable that people don't realize how far there is underneath of us to fall, and things can get a lot worse than what we think. A lot worse than what we think. So some libertarians have asked me recently on Twitter specifically why I've been putting so much focus on the rioters and the looters, which on its face to me just seems like a very strange question. A very strange question. I mean, I understand people are like, well, you're usually, railing against the state, and now all of a sudden you're railing against the people who are protesting the state. Why am I so focused on the rioters and the looters? And I guess the answer would be, well, in major cities across the country, including my home city, where I've lived my entire life, short of a few weeks, there are people destroying the like my areas. They're just I don't know. I mean, why would I not be talking about this would be a better question. So let me say this, right? So I'm a libertarian. I'm an anarchist, anarcho-capitalist. I hate the state, right? The old Murray Rothbard test. I pass it with flying colors. I hate the state, but I don't just hate the state because it's cool to, or because I'm like, I don't know, I want to be against the establishment or something like that, or I hate the state for a very specific reason, or a couple very specific reasons. And the main reason that I hate the state, and why I think libertarians in general should hate the state, is because the state is an institution predicated on initiating violence against peaceful people and their property. That's what I don't like about them. Okay, so it's not like I just chose, for some other reason, like that's just my team is against the state. It's because I'm a libertarian. I am appalled by acts of violence against peaceful people and property destruction. And that's what the state's founded on. So why would I not be appalled by acts of violence against peaceful people and the destruction of their property when another group is doing it? Like, how is this hard for libertarians to understand? Of course we're against that. It's horrific. And I'll tell you, this thing has really, it's become, and as you guys know, I've said, from the very beginning, and for all these years, I always try to make things not a racial issue, because I am to some degree an individualist. I mean, I recognize that we're a social animal, and we all need the help of other people. And to me, that's really what the market is all about, is people working together cooperatively, voluntarily. But I'm an individualist in the sense that I think morally individuals are who are responsible. Individuals are the ones who think and act, and individuals, individuals suffer individually, and they also should be responsible individually for the suffering they inflict on other people. So I don't like making things racialized when they don't need to be. And in fact, I think that the bad guys do this all the time. As I was talking about in the last podcast, they do this as a divide and conquer technique. Come on. I mean, when you see like these big corporations, when you see like the woke capitalism, when you see the JP Morgan Chase, tweeting something about like Black Lives Matter or something like that, be smart enough to see what's going on here. This is a fucking tactic. Why would JP Morgan Chase want to, ration up racial tensions. Well, it's so you guys start fighting against each other and don't realize that JP Morgan Chase is in bed with the Federal Reserve and is screwing everybody over, and everybody's in fucking debt to them and their buddies, right? So that's how this whole thing works. But this is the whole narrative around this has really become like hyper racialized. And you've seen it with the like Blackout Wednesday or Blackout Tuesday or whatever day it was, where all the white people are supposed to post like a black image and not say anything, and all this stuff about I don't know, like white people need to like shut up and listen to others, and it's like I don't go for that. Sorry, I'm not going to shut up. I'm a man, and I'm never going to sit there like a bitch and not speak my mind, not tell the truth as I see it. That's just not how I'm built, and I'm not going to fucking do that. And I'd advise you don't either. And especially something as big as this, like what, you don't get to comment on it? I don't get to comment on my city being destroyed? Sorry, that's not how this is going to work. But there does seem to be something about the racial dynamic that paralyzes a lot of white people from criticizing the situation. And I think that's why these other libertarians are failing. Because truthfully, they just don't have the balls to criticize something that flies behind the banner of Black Lives Matter, even if they're destroying Black businesses and Black communities. It doesn't matter. Even if they're creating a situation where undeniably more Black people are going to get fucked over by the state, it doesn't matter. They still just can't criticize them. And here's the point that I'm making, okay? Let's say we had heard reports about the U.S. military when they were in Iraq or wherever. It doesn't really matter for the example, but they're in Fallujah or they're in Baghdad or something, and we heard reports about how they were going around beating the shit out of old women, destroying businesses, looting, keeping it for themselves, just smashing businesses open, taking people's shit and running out with it and going back like, oh, look, all the troops got some new fucking Nikes. They got a new iPad. They got like all this shit. What if they started vandalizing mosques and setting them on fire and spray painting, fuck this mosque or some shit like that all over the side of it? Every goddamn libertarian would be appalled by that. They would call it out in a second. They would be like, this is an outrage that you would do that to these people. They'd have no trouble calling it out. So why the hell can't we call it out now? Are you really such a fucking coward that you're afraid of what? Not being seen as sympathetic to a marginalized people or something like this? Really? Now, as I said before, I am an individualist, so I recognize there are legitimate people who are like protesting and shit like that. But you know what? This thing has reached a point where I don't think you should be protesting anymore. I really don't. I don't care how evil a thing you're protesting is. I would not be protesting anymore at this point. If I was protesting the Iraq War, where 1 million people died. I mean, it just the worst thing you could imagine. And it was a war completely sold off lies and as noble a thing to protest as there is. And these protests started degenerating into this shit. I would not be sitting here making excuses, pointing out how some of us are really good protesters and then all these other people are just coming in and beating up old women and throwing bricks through stores and destroying all these people who did nothing, had nothing to do with the war. I would just stop protesting. I'd be like, this is out of control and we shouldn't be doing this anymore. And I would forcefully condemn the people who are doing that shit. So I'm not buying the excuses. I'm not too much of a coward to fucking call out abhorrent behavior where I see it. And I don't think other people should be either. I don't think it's helpful to anyone to ignore this shit when it's right in our face. It's despicable. And it's heartbreaking. And it's just like, even the things that aren't obviously like the people who have been like viciously assaulted, that's the most, despicable part of all of this. But as I was indicating before, the church is being set on fire. I mean, I don't just say this as the most popular Christian conservative in podcasting, but it's such an awful, profoundly awful thing to do. to a place that's a place of worship, a holy place for lots of people. That was, I mean, we're not anymore, obviously, because we moved, but that was my wife's church, St. Patrick's Cathedral. To see that desecrated, you know how painful that is for Catholics to see? I mean, I know no one cares about them. If it was a synagogue or it was a mosque, we'd be all up in arms about like a hate crime or something like this. But, you know, Catholics, what? They're just supposed to fucking take it. Just fucking desecrate a holy building to them. And what a horrible thing to do. The one in Washington, D.C., where they set on fire this historic church. There's like no respect for civilization. By the way, that's why I've always been against the state, you know, because they're a de-civilization organization. But what is this? This is worse. This is worse than the state. That takes a lot to get me to say that, but this is worse. It's all of the you know, violence, the property damage, all that shit, but just more chaotic. It's horrible, and I don't understand how it's even an issue for people to condemn this. It just should be so obvious. All right, let's take a second and thank our sponsor for today's show, which of course is Heshy Socks. The brand new collection has been released. They are beautiful. I love them. New styles, new colors, but the same amazing feel. And that's what Heshy Socks are all about. If you're unfamiliar, these are my favorite socks on the planet. If you've ever had problems with your feet hurting after you wear dress shoes after a long day of work, go to heshysocks.com. They will solve this problem for you. Most fashion and dress socks are expensive, they're poorly constructed, and they provide zero protection. Not Heshy Socks. Heshy Socks are cushioned in the heel, foot, and toe. They have arch support in the center so your feet don't slosh around. They're also designed to stay up so you don't have to tug at your socks all day long. They're made with breathable Pima cotton, and they're antimicrobial, so they kill the stink. Your feet smell good, they feel good if you're wearing Heshy Socks, and you can grab them at heshysocks.com, heshysocks.com. You guys, if you haven't gotten a pair of Heshy Socks yet, go buy one pair. I'm telling you, you're going to go buy 5 more because they're the most comfortable, kick-ass socks for work or play. So go to heshysocks.com and enter the promo code PROBLEM30. It'll get you 30% off your entire order. heshysocks.com, promo code PROBLEM30 for 30% off your order. All right, let's get back into the show. Anyway, all of that being said, it does seem to be the racial component that is really fucking with people. And even when they do, as we were talking about in the last episode, even when people do condemn it, it seems like it has to be like, well, there's the white agitators, or, well, there's, you know, the outside infiltrators or something like this. Look, that is not what the vast majority of this violence is coming from. It's the people protesting. I tweeted out earlier that it seems to me, let me actually read exactly what I tweeted out. Excuse me one second. Okay, so I tweeted earlier today, and I stand by this. I said it's starting to look less and less like a reaction to George Floyd and more like a reaction to the COVID lockdowns. And I got some people who were like, why don't you just listen to what they're saying? It's all about George Floyd. They're chanting George Floyd. I'm not asking what they were hollering as they were out there. I'm saying when you start to look at what's really driving this. Now, what happened to George Floyd, okay, it's bad. It doesn't really seem to me like all of these riots are about that. First off, check out all the videos of people looting and dancing and fucking, it doesn't really seem like that was a direct response to George Floyd. I think it's really the angst that's been built up over months of people being locked up in their homes. And we all should have expected that there would be some negative unintended consequences, unforeseen consequences to all of this. And, you know, you got to think that people's, you know, the park, your bar, your restaurants, your friend's house, these are all places you would go to let off steam, and they're all closed down. And now all of a sudden, this is just building and building. And now here's an excuse. And now this is the thing to do. Go fucking, this is the, like, you know, there's nothing else. There's no bar open. There's no sports on. There's nothing else. The only game in town is the fucking riot. So this is what a lot of fucking young you know, people who are maybe live in a world of criminality anyway. This is what they're going to do. So, you know, another thought that I had, and I got into, you know, an argument, another similar thing on Twitter regarding this the other day was that, so what happened was someone tweeted at me that they were like, well, shouldn't a libertarian like you know that, you know, the cops are the bad guys, and that the cops murder more people than anybody else? And I in some, you know, sarcastic kind of dickish way, said, no, what? No, they don't. The cops don't murder more than anybody else. And then I started getting shit from other libertarians who were like, what are you doing? You're carrying water for the cops now. And again, just that accusation alone just kind of shakes me. Like, how could I be accused of that? Like, look at my body of work. How could I be accused of carrying water for the cops? But no, I'm just correcting something that's wrong. It's a blatant, demonstrably false statement. Is that what we libertarians are reduced to? I have to just not point out that something is factually incorrect because it might go along with my narrative. It might like confirm my own bias. No, I'm sorry. Like, I can be against taxation, and if someone were to say, did you know that you know, people who make $30,000 a year in America have to pay 90% of it in income tax? Should I just agree with that because I'm against taxation? Or would it be like, well, no, actually, that's not true. That's nowhere close to true. Sorry, I'm going to tell the truth. But what's the point of all of this? What's the point of doing these shows, if anything like that, if we're not just going to tell the truth, at least as we see it? And in this case, just the factual truth. Like, this is not true. Cops do not murder more than anybody else. That's not the case. And it's not really helpful to say that right now. And, you know, obviously, as I said on the last show, I'm against fucking what they did to George Floyd. I think that was wrong. But I'm almost tired of fucking saying that. Because what is the point? What is that doing right now to point that out? Everyone knows that. Even the cops fucking know that. That's why the cops charged this guy. And he's fucking going to go on trial for murder. I think he just got moved up to second-degree murder. So yeah, that's okay. That's wrong. But is that what libertarians exist for? Part of the reason, what attracted me to libertarianism was that libertarians, I thought, and they were at the time, were courageous. I mean, that was part of why people fell in love with Ron Paul, because he had real fucking courage. I mean, he was like staring down the military-industrial complex. That takes some balls, man. Like, this, people die over shit like that. He's a sitting congressman running for president, challenging the military-industrial complex. That's some real shit, okay? That takes courage. Pointing out right now that you think what happened to George Floyd was wrong is not, it doesn't take any courage at all. It's the easiest fucking thing to say. And it adds nothing to the situation. Tell me where I'm wrong. Like, I do think it was wrong, but what's the point of even like getting into that now? Well, no, now what's more important is to be like, yeah, okay, what they did to that guy was wrong. You don't get to go do horrific things to other people. You don't get to tear down civilization and then expect the rest of us to fucking clean up after you so you can still benefit from it. Sorry, you don't get to do that. It's just like profoundly destructive and immature and evil. And the fact that there's libertarians out there who are, quite frankly, too fucking pussy to call that shit out is disturbing to me. Where the fuck are Rand and Rothbard when you need them? Well, they're dead. But they would have had the stones to call this out in a second. In a second. They would have been like, this is a violent mob. We are against the initiation of violence. When the state does it, we're against it. And when private people do it, we're against that too. Doesn't seem that hard to me. And, I'm sorry, but I'm just not like, I'm losing patience with the whole even protest You know, that's what everybody has to say right now. You know, you have to say it's what, well, it's a whole bunch of them are peaceful protesters, and you have to separate the ones looting and the rioters from the peaceful protesters. I'm getting over that. I don't really buy it. And in the same way that I just said, if I was involved in a peaceful protest and this shit was going on all around me, I'd stop. I'd be like, no, I don't want to be a part of that. So I'm not really buying that. And to me, these excuses, and it's like the guy on Twitter saying, well, I mean, I think she called him the N-word. Oh, well, then in that case, beat the fucking shit out of her. Why not, right? 4 thugs beat up an old lady. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize she called you a name. Sure, go for it, right? Is that your level of morality? And by the way, of course, not that it even makes any sense to fucking point this shit out anymore, but that's also about the most racist shit I've ever heard. And I mean racist in like the fucking bigotry of low expectations type shit. What, you really think black people are such fucking animal savages that, whoa, if they heard a word that bothers them, then you can't expect them to not fucking ape out on an old lady? Really? Who's the fucking racist here? Okay. No, I'm sorry. You can't beat up an old lady. I don't care if she called you a name or not. Anyway, I'm losing sympathy for even the actual protest. I mean, look, there is a problem with police in America. There's no question about that. But to make it out as if, like, look, when you see, here's more or less how I'd say it, right? It's like, I think Tom Wood said something along these lines, and he's kind of borrowing from Michael Malice, and I'm kind of borrowing from him, but I'm just going to say this in my own way. When you see evil, okay, you can either condemn the evil or you can give me a speech apologizing for it. And you could do this with every level of evil that's ever existed. It's like, you can either condemn it or give me a speech. That's all I want. That's what, if you, and this is true, this is the shit I've been standing up to about the fucking statists for the last decade. This is the shit I've been dealing with. What'll they say? What do they say when you talk about police brutality? They go, what? Well, it's just a few. It's like, even the worst example of police brutality, something like this, the George Floyd thing. Oh, it's just a few bad apples. And, it'll be like, maybe they'll acknowledge it's bad. Yeah, that was bad, but it's just a few bad apples. And there's fine men and women, and the cops do all of this. And, they blah, 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 blah. And it's a whole speech. It's like, they can't just go, no, that was fucking evil. And that shouldn't have happened. Period. No disclaimers. Just evil, no speech, just condemn it. If I start saying, like whatever, like all the innocent people that were lost in the war in Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya or Syria or Yemen or, pick a war. And you start, going like, yes, it is unfortunate that people die, but there are these terrorists and the military has to do this and blah, 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 blah. It's like, don't give me a fucking speech. You're just apologizing for evil. And in the same sense, if I show you people beating the shit out of an old lady, people soccer kicking a guy who's unconscious on the street, and you start giving me some speech about how, well, most of them are peaceful protesters and these are just a few bad apples and the bigger picture, blah, blah, blah. You're doing the same fucking thing that those right wingers do. The exact same thing. And it's disgusting. Just fucking call it out. I'm sorry. So I'm not into this game of splitting hairs about, oh, well, the peaceful protesters are here. The peaceful protesters should stop. What they're doing is destroying cities across a country that's already been through hell for the last 3 months. Okay? They should stop protesting. And it's more, you know what? And the grievance itself is a lot more complicated than they make it out to be. And I'm no fan of the fucking cops. We could go through all the fucking policies that should be changed to make the situation better in America. I've been talking about it for 10 years. But yes, we should end the war on drugs. We should privatize the police. There's a million different things that we should do to try to solve this situation. But I'm not going to sit here the same way I'm not going to sit here and pretend that someone who makes $20,000 a year pays a 90% income tax because it's factually incorrect. I'm not going to pretend that the police murder more people than anybody else. No, they fucking don't. I'm not going to pretend that the police are just out there murdering black people all of the time, as if this is some common occurrence. I'm sorry. That's not the reality of the situation. It's not. Now, the police do harass people. They do arrest, aka kidnap people all the time. That happens all the time, sure. But they're not just out there murdering people all the time. We're allowed to tell the truth, even if it doesn't, give a nice warm hug to our cozy narrative. Sometimes you just got to deal with reality and then try to find the truth of what's actually happening here. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And you know what? There's grievances on the other side too. I got to say, I'm an anti-cop guy. I always have been. I'm against the state. I don't like cops. I've had many shitty interactions with cops. And the problems that cops have are basically all the problems of a monopoly. All right. And the same thing we were talking about on our Federal Reserve episode. Monopolies cause problems. And when the monopoly is enforcing the law, they cause real problems. People do not do well with power. Power corrupts. It goes to their heads. Cops have way too much of it. They don't work for you. They rule you. And it's a big problem, okay? It's a big fucking problem. But I got to say, in the same sense that I can be against the wars and against the military, but I don't want to see fucking troops get murdered. I don't want to see fucking some guy with a family who just fucking signed up for this job. Yeah, I don't think the job should be there. But I don't know. That was sickening to see that cop get hit by that fucking car and twirl in the air. It was sickening to see that fucking former police officer die on the ground. His murder was Facebook lived. It's just horrific. And I'm not just always knee jerk against them. If it comes down to a battle between Antifa and the cops, are you telling me I just have to be against the cops because I'm a libertarian? Yeah, I don't like that cops violate people's rights. The fuck do you think Antifa does? What do you think the system would look like if they fucking took over? I don't know. I don't know that as a libertarian I'm required to root for Antifa. I don't think so. And I'm sorry, there's some of these situations where they're pounding around on the fucking car of an NYPD officer and he runs those people over. I have zero fucking sympathy for those people. I'm sorry. If you're going to fucking charge a car with 100 people and you're pounding on the fucking car, standing in front of it, and he's honking his horn, you might get run over by that car. Are you familiar with what cars do? So then move away from the front of it. I'm sorry, I don't sympathize with that. And, it's like, we really should, like I said, we should have 1 million of these policy reforms. They contribute to making the situation worse, but people have agency. And I don't think it's fair or helpful or accurate to treat Black people as if they don't have any agency. I don't see how that is right. And the truth is that there is a violence problem amongst the police in this country, right? And libertarians, we're against violence. We're against the initiation of violence against peaceful people, right? Those are our principles. Okay. Well, there's also a major problem with violence in the Black community. And the two are related. They are not unrelated. And we can sit here and pretend that this doesn't exist because, it makes us feel better, or because, frankly, we're fucking cowards and we don't want to get the heat or the labels, that come with telling the truth. But if we're cowards like that, then we're done, because we're trying to take down the military-industrial complex. We're trying to take down the national security state. We're trying to take down the most entrenched power in human history. And cowards ain't going to get that done. So let's sack up and let's tell the fucking truth. And the truth is that, yes, Black people might be scared of the cops in a lot of situations. You know what? The cops are also scared of Black people in a lot of situations. And they both probably have some legitimacy for that. And the same way is when if a Black person's scared of the cops and you were to say to them, be like, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of cops who aren't going to kill you. That's not very comforting, is it? Because he has no way of knowing whether you're that cop or not. And the same is true the other way around. Cops are scared of a lot of these Black people, and they have no way of knowing who's the violent ones and who's not. Okay? So I understand that black people are scared of being profiled by the police, or they're scared of being shot by the police. You know what? White people are scared to go into parts of pretty much every major city across the country, and for good reason. But we're just supposed to pretend like that doesn't exist, because that's, whatever. Someone will label you racist or right wing or whatever the fuck is, or a Nazi. I don't care. Throw all the fucking labels at me. I don't fucking care anymore. I'm literally sitting here watching my fucking city burn up, watching innocent people be fucking viciously assaulted, watching businesses be destroyed, churches being desecrated. I don't really give a shit what name you're going to fucking call me. I've built this show up as to be one of the biggest libertarian podcasts that there is. And I've done it by always telling you guys the truth as I see it. That's what I fucking do. And I've made this decision a long time ago. My career could have been much easier in different ways if I was willing to just not tell the truth. Believe me, I'm a comedian in New York City. Being a left winger makes life a lot easier. I started getting gigs at Fox News. Being a fucking, neocon would have made life a lot easier. But I decided a long time ago, when I had nothing, that I was just going to be me and tell the truth as I see it. And I'm proud that I've built this shit up by doing that. And I'm not going to stop doing that now. Just doesn't seem like, if I stop doing that, then what's the point of me? What's the point of me being here? Then I'm just what fucking everybody who I despise is, and I'm not going to do that. The other thing is that it's better to get on the out in front of this, because this shit is not going to age well. And people are going to look back at this and think about the horror. They're not going to look back at this and think about the fact, the community of people, of people who were, grieving or something like that. Cause it's just not, it's not what it is. Now I fucking hope this shit stops soon. And I gotta say, I am rooting for the violence and the looting to be stopped. However that has to happen. That's what I'm fucking rooting for. I want this shit to be stopped. I don't want to see fucking cities destroyed. I don't want to see businesses destroyed. I'm over it. It's fucking, it's repulsive to watch all of this happening, and, to watch people making excuses for it. And it really does. It's like fucking, it reminds me that, as I said in the beginning, and I guess maybe I'll kind of close on this thought, but it reminds me of everything I hate about the state. It's everything I hate about it, down to the very detail. The fact that it's just this group of people who feel they are morally entitled to violate people's rights, to assault people, to take their stuff, to destroy lives. And the one thing about the state that a lot of us ANCAP libertarians have always said is like a little bit different. So the difference, we would always say between like a private criminal and the government is that, okay, so if there's some thief who comes and takes your money, we all recognize him as a thief. You know what I mean? But if the government taxes you, they have this air of legitimacy. That's what I always talk about, the state being, the mafia masquerading as a human rights organization. It's like they pretend, and it's collectively believed that they are, well, there are, elected leaders, or they're, civil servants or whatever, but really they're just robbing you all the same. So when someone robs you, people come together, they go, okay, we need to hire security, we need to put up cameras, we can take measures to stop this. Whereas when the state does it, there is no measure, because they have a monopoly on security and all this shit. So people can't really fight back against it. And I'm seeing the same thing with these fucking mobs. Is that people are it's literally like people are trying to convince me that, well, this is, these are grieving people, and this is how change happens, and these are the unheard, and these people are marginalized and oppressed and all of this shit. It's like, no, I'm sorry, that I'm not interested in this fucking excuse making. It's just not, that's not okay. Even when, libertarians would argue, like blowback theory, when we're talking about actual terrorists and we're talking about actual oppression, like we've gone into a country on a bombing campaign for 10 years, and now there are these people who want to come over here and bomb us. Nobody not even the most hardcore libertarian I've ever met would say that Osama bin Laden is justified in what he's doing. I mean, what? Like, no, you can't kill innocent people. I don't care if other innocent people were killed. That doesn't make that okay. Like, you can't just say because you have a grievance, it's okay. And if someone had said to any libertarian, be like, oh, we have a shot to capture Osama bin Laden and try him, or actual terrorists who have murdered people, we can try them, find them guilty, and execute them, we'd be all for that. Absolutely. That's what we're for, is justice, right? Right? Isn't that we are libertarians because we love liberty and we hate injustice. That's why we're here. At least that's what I thought. And I don't accept the excuse making. I don't. And I find it terrible. I don't want to hear a fucking speech about why I should not condemn evil acts when I see them. I'm sorry. It's like, what, it's like, what do you could do this for anybody. You know what I mean? If you would say like, well, the reason why I have to accept people beating up an old lady and vandalizing churches and going in and raiding and looting the Nike store is because these people have been marginalized and oppressed, and like, oh, okay, what couldn't you justify with that logic? What if I were to tell you, if you were like, oh, the Holocaust was so terrible, and I was like, well, but do you know how marginalized and oppressed the German people were? And by the way, they were. Look at what happened to the German people in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. You know what the fucking world was doing to those people? It was terrible. But that doesn't fucking justify genocide. I'm sorry. You can still, if someone asks you about a genocide, you don't give them a fucking speech. You agree, yes, that's fucking evil. And I'm not